One moment, the Soliman family was celebrating Habiba's high school graduation, a milestone that marked years of hard work, hope, and sacrifice. The living room was filled with laughter, pride, and the promise of a bright future in their new home. For the Solimans, this was a day to cherish, a symbol of the American dream they had worked so hard to achieve. But just days later, everything changed. Their world collapsed in an instant, replaced by confusion, fear, and heartbreak. The joy of graduation was quickly overshadowed by a tragedy that no one could have predicted. Mohamed Soliman, Habiba's father, committed a violent attack in Boulder, Colorado. The news spread rapidly, and the family's name was suddenly everywhere, on television, in newspapers, and across social media. The shock of the crime rippled through the community, leaving neighbors and friends stunned. In the aftermath, Habiba, her mother, and 4 siblings were detained. Their American dreams, once so close, were shattered by the actions of one man. The family, who had done nothing wrong themselves, found their lives turned upside down overnight. Immigration officers arrived at their door, and the Solimans were taken into custody. The future they had envisioned was suddenly uncertain, replaced by fear and anxiety about what would come next. The children, who had only known life in America, now faced the possibility of losing everything. The Solimans became the focus of national scrutiny, not for their own actions, but for Mohammed's crime. News crews camped outside their home, and reporters questioned neighbors, searching for answers. The family's privacy vanished, replaced by a relentless spotlight. Their arrest, just 2 days after the attack, sent shockwaves through their community. Friends and neighbors struggled to make sense of what had happened, torn between sympathy and suspicion. The Soliman story became a topic of heated debate. Now the family sits in an ICE detention center, their lives upended and their fate uncertain. Each day is filled with questions about their future, their safety, and whether they will ever return to the life they once knew. The question remains, are they guilty by association, or are they victims of a system struggling to respond to tragedy? The legal process is slow and complicated, and the family's hopes now rest in the hands of strangers. The Soliman family's story is more than a headline. It's a test of justice, family, and the American dream. Their journey challenges us to consider how we treat the innocent in times of crisis, and what it truly means to seek justice in the aftermath of tragedy. On June 1st, Boulder, Colorado, was rocked by an act of terror that would leave the city forever changed. What began as a peaceful evening quickly turned into a nightmare, as the community was forced to confront a reality that seemed unimaginable just hours before. Mohamed Sabry, an Egyptian immigrant who had been living in the United States for several years, targeted a group of Jewish marchers during a public demonstration. Armed with a homemade firebomb, he unleashed chaos and fear, injuring 12 innocent people. Among the victims was an 88-year-old Holocaust survivor, a living testament to the horrors of hate, now forced to endure new trauma. During his arrest and subsequent interrogation, Soliman confessed to meticulously planning the attack for over a year. He cited deep-seated anti-Semitic beliefs and a distorted sense of justice tied to the conflict in Palestine as his motivation. The authorities quickly classified the incident as a hate crime, and the community was left grappling with the reality that such hatred could fester so close to home. The aftermath was devastating. Physical wounds began to heal, but the emotional scars ran deep. Vigils were held, and the city mourned together, struggling to make sense of the senseless. Families of the victims, friends, and neighbors all felt the weight of the tragedy, their sense of safety shattered. As investigators dug deeper, Soliman's immigration status became a lightning rod for public debate. It was revealed that he had overstayed his visa, raising questions about the effectiveness of immigration enforcement and the systems meant to protect communities from such threats. Across the nation, people watched in shock as Boulder's tragedy unfolded. The attack forced Americans to confront the harsh reality of hate-fueled violence and the vulnerability of public gatherings. Security was heightened at events everywhere, and conversations about safety, tolerance, and vigilance took on new urgency. In the days that followed, Soliman's family was detained by immigration authorities. Their lives, once ordinary, were now inseparable from the horror of the attack. The family faced uncertainty, fear, and public scrutiny, caught in the crosshairs of a tragedy they did not cause. The government's response was swift and highly publicized. Press conferences were held and officials promised justice and reform. Public perception was shaped not only by the brutality of Soliman's crime, but also by the broader questions it raised about security, immigration, and the fight against extremism. The Soliman family's fate became entangled with the aftermath of one man's hate. As legal proceedings unfolded, they faced an uncertain future, their story now a part of the city's collective memory. The tragedy in Boulder stands as a stark reminder of how the ripple effects of extremism can devastate innocent lives, leaving communities to pick up the pieces and search for hope in the face of unimaginable loss. Just 2 days after the tragic attack, federal agents from ICE moved swiftly, arresting Mohamed Soliman's wife and all 5 of their children, including their teenage daughter Habiba. The family was taken into custody in the early morning hours, leaving neighbors shocked and the community reeling from the sudden escalation. The Soliman's immigration statuses remain uncertain, but it's known that Mohamed had overstayed his visa by several years. This violation placed the entire family under the microscope of immigration authorities, who began to scrutinize their paperwork and history for any possible infractions. Under the Trump administration's aggressive catch-and-revoke policy, immigrants can be targeted for removal if they are even loosely connected to criminal activity, regardless of their own direct involvement. This policy has led to a sharp increase in deportations and has made families like the Solimans especially vulnerable. The White House quickly seized on the Soliman case, using it as a public example to reinforce its tough stance on immigration enforcement. Officials released statements to the press, signaling a clear intent to deport the family and making their situation a national talking point. The Department of Homeland Security confirmed the family's detention, elevating the case to a high-profile federal action. The move drew attention from advocacy groups and legal experts who questioned the fairness and timing of the arrests. It's important to note that deportation isn't automatic for relatives of those accused of crimes. U.S. law requires that there be independent immigration violations, such as overstaying a visa or lacking proper documentation, before removal proceedings can begin. Despite the pressure, authorities acknowledge that the Soliman family has fully cooperated with investigators, answering questions and providing documents as requested. Their willingness to engage with officials may influence the outcome of their case. The Solimans' arrest underscores the complex intersection between criminal justice and immigration enforcement, where legal boundaries often blur and families can become collateral damage in broader policy battles. For the Soliman family, what began as a pursuit of the American dream has now turned into a desperate struggle to remain together and avoid being sent back to a country they no longer call home. Ultimately, their fate will be decided not by the strength of their family bonds, but by the complexities of U.S. immigration law and the shifting priorities of federal authorities. Despite the crime committed by Mohamed Soliman, his family has rights under U.S. law. They are entitled to due process, a hearing before an immigration judge, the right to present evidence, and to appeal a deportation order. They can have legal counsel, though not provided by the government. Immigration proceedings are civil, not criminal, but the stakes are life-changing. The process is designed to prevent hasty or unjust decisions. These protections apply regardless of the family's immigration status or their relation to Mohamed. The Solimans' future depends on these fundamental legal safeguards. U.S. law does not punish family members for a relative's crime. The Soliman family's deportation depends on their own immigration status or evidence of complicity. So far, authorities report the family has cooperated and there's no evidence of involvement in the attack. The government may pursue removal for even minor immigration infractions, especially under current policies. The case tests whether justice is truly individual or if families can be swept up in collective punishment. Even if found deportable, the Soliman family may seek asylum or other relief if they face danger in Egypt. Asylum requires proof of a well-founded fear of persecution. Other protections exist for those at risk of torture. Habiba's story stands out. A scholarship winner, aspiring doctor, and community volunteer. She overcame language barriers and excelled in school, embodying the immigrant dream. Now her future, and her siblings, hangs in the balance. Their fight is not just legal, but deeply personal. The Soliman struggle is about more than law, it's about hope, identity, and the right to belong. Their plea is for a chance to build the lives they dreamed of in America. The Soliman case has ignited fierce debate. Some see the family's detention as collective punishment, arguing it's unjust to penalize children for their father's crime. Others insist immigration laws must be enforced, regardless of circumstance. The White House's public stance signals a hardline approach. The debate raises questions. Is this justice, deterrence, or simply policy? The emotional weight of the attack complicates the issue, but due process and individual rights remain crucial. The Soliman family's fate will shape how America defines justice and compassion in moments of crisis. What do you think? Is this fair enforcement, or are the innocent paying for another's crime?